Hey, I'm Delise.
And I'm Jenny.
We know that parenting comes in seasons, and even the smallest wins deserve a happy dance.
Join us as we chat with moms in every stage of the parenting journey, fixing our eyes on Jesus each step of the way.
This is Blessings and Motherhood, because we believe that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Blessings and Motherhood. Today, I am very excited to reintroduce to you Lisa Bailey. Lisa Bailey is a longtime friend of Classical Conversations and the host of Everyday Educator, which is our premier podcast. And today, we're going to talk a lot about her parenting journey. She's going to take a look at the rearview mirror, and we have a big announcement for you. So you'll want to listen to the end because we've got something really great we want to share. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Delise. It is always a joy to talk to you, and I'm excited to be with your listeners again and just be introduced. It's fun to know new friends. Your friends can become my friends, and that'll be great.
Exactly. That's the best. I love it when my friends introduce me to their friends.
Yes.
It feels like the circle just gets richer. So I know that a lot of our listeners are familiar with you, and your name is one that they've seen on curriculum and all kinds of things. But for those who maybe don't know Lisa Bailey, can you introduce yourself, your family, and the work that you do?
Sure. I am Lisa. I am a homeschooling mom of a lot of years and now a grandma, and that is so wonderful. I joined up with Classical Conversations. This is hard for me to say, 21 years ago. So in 2004, our family began our journey, and I had two little girls in foundations, and the company was very new and needed tutors, needed directors. And so I said, oh, sure, I'll do Challenge B, not realizing that, we couldn't get anybody else to teach logic and algebra and mock trial to teenagers. But I loved it. I found my sweet spot, and I did that for a bunch of years. I think that I was the original Challenge B program manager, which means that I worked on the guides and worked on training other people to love 13-year-olds through our curriculum. And I loved that. I was blessed to shepherd North Carolina for several years as the state manager. And we grew. It was at a point in our history and a point in the homeschooling world. CC just exploded. We went from 50 directors to, I think, 154 when the company did some reorganizing, and I moved over to a different position and shepherded practicums for a lot of years, and the content, and then the training of the people who would train the speakers to do the practicums. And I loved that because it gave me a real insight into what was going on all over the country with families. And my heart has really been, my heart has always been with 8th graders, but my heart has also been with parents, encouraging them that they can do it, inspiring them that this is what can come when you say yes to what God's calling you to do, and then equipping them for the journey too. I just love that. I love empowering parents to do the thing that they have said yes to, which is educating their children at home. And so for the last several years, I have worked with Classical Conversations Multimedia as the director of program development and support. So mostly I work with developing Scribblers, Foundations, and Essentials content, and all of the support assets that are produced for tutors and directors who are implementing everything from Scribblers all the way through Challenge. So I've loved what I've been able to do, and they graciously let me hold on to the Everyday Educator podcast. So that's my fun thing. That's where I get to dabble in asking really cool people really insightful questions that equip parents and encourage them that I can do this and I don't have to do it by myself. I've got
Mhm.
a whole stable of people and a wealth of experience that I can draw on so that maybe I don't have to make all my own mistakes. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that podcasting, I mean, you're wonderful at everything that you do, but I love how it really encapsulates your desire to equip and encourage
Yeah.
families, because it's one thing to say you can do it, but it's another thing to give them what they need to get it done.
Yes, and to say you don't have to do it perfectly in order to begin to do it. No, none of
Right.
us did it. Well, none of us do it perfectly now, but especially in the beginning. But it's
Mhm.
okay. I mean, it's okay.
Exactly. It's a
God is the God of grace.
and it's a process, and, I all of our listeners know that I'm a very young mom, and they've heard from you that you're a lolly. She's a grandmother.
Yes.
How many do you have now? It keeps
I
growing.
have 2 and 1 on the way.
There we go. I had 3 question mark in my notes.
Yes, yes, that's it.
Um, so yeah, she's got 2 and 3 on 2 and another on the way, and I have 1 and another on the way. Surprise.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that.
Me too, thank you. And, I'm not sure if this wears off or if this is just part of parenting because you never stop being a parent.
That's
But
true.
young moms often feel unsure. We feel very sure about our convictions, but we're unsure as to whether or not they're going to lead us to where we want to go. And
Yeah.
so we're constantly saying, "Oh, I hope I'm doing this right. I hope I'm not ruining my kids." And I'd love to start on kind of a positive note with you looking back over the years. And can you think of times when maybe you had some strengths that you didn't even realize you had, or you did things that were really helpful for your girls in your parenting specifically that ended up being even better than you could have hoped?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, for all the perfectionistic mamas out there, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I mean, I still struggle with that. I had, this one picture in my mind of what successful homeschooling would be, and God started tearing that down early, which was a blessing because I didn't have to harbor it for very many years because I
Right.
saw, oh, that's not realistic, or that's not realistic for me anyway. Um, there were some things that I learned. There were definitely some things I felt confident about. I mean, I love to read, and I knew I could teach my children to love books because I
Mm.
loved books and I had been reading to them since they were in the womb, literally. And so I wasn't worried about that. I did worry, was I going to be able to teach them subjects that I wasn't good at or that I didn't like when I was a student? So I discovered that I do have a strength for doing that because I was very determined that my children would not be um, hampered with the same fears that I had. So I was a fearful math person. I never felt very confident about math. And I just never felt, I always felt like I was 2 steps behind, and I never really understood the why of a lot of it. And it seemed very important to me. And so I did discover, however, as I sat doing math, doing advanced Saxon advanced math with my girls, that I can tackle the things that I wasn't good at or that I didn't like. I know that as the mom of a Challenge 3 student, I did more chemistry at my kitchen table with my girls than I ever did when I made an A in chemistry in high school. And I understood a whole lot more. So a strength that I had that I didn't realize I had was the stubbornness to tackle things I wasn't good at before. I did also discover that I could change the way I think about education. I mean, I tend to think I know things, and I'm very confident in some of the things that I think. But I discovered that am flexible enough to change the way I think about education. I came into homeschooling like a lot of us probably do who were educated, maybe in the public school system, thinking that it's really important that you master all these bodies of information. And to be a good, well-rounded student, it means that you were good at languages and English and science and math and some fine art stuff, and that the subjects were really important and the material in there was really important. And I finally am reformed. Now I really do understand that it's the skills of learning that are important, because if I acquire those skills and I work really hard to sharpen them and practice them and use them, and I'm practicing and sharpening and using them on content, but the aim is really to get better at the skill, I pick up the content along the way. It's just like, it's like marinating a piece of meat. It's going to get in there. And so I discovered that it really is the skills. And I saw this in my girls when they grew up and went away from home. What they remembered was not what we did on week 13 of the chemistry module in challenge 3. It's my responsibility to learn. And if I don't know something, I need to go back and see, what did I miss and how can I find it and how can I pick it up and absorb it. So that's a skill of learning. I did discover, and my husband had always told me this. He said, you just make children crazy. I'm like, I don't make children crazy. Children are crazy and we just connect. I discovered that thinking like a child is actually a good thing, because I could enter their world and I could sometimes find a different way to get the information across. Everybody knows if you have 2 children, the only thing you can be sure of is that they will not learn the same way. They will not learn the same way. So I had my first child and I just thought, well, I'm clearly the best homeschool mom ever. She read early and she loves to learn and she's very articulate and she writes stories before she can hold the pencil well. And the second one was like, she did not learn the same way. And so I had to find different ways to learn, multiple ways to learn and teach, because my kids are different than I am, and they are for sure different from each other. But the strength of being able to get into their mind and play with them is what really stood me in good stead, because we could connect in relationship and find a playful way to approach this thing from the back door that, for whatever reason, she had slammed the front door shut on. And so that was really good. And you know what else I discovered, Delise? I discovered that I was already doing a lot. I had already taught my girls a lot of things. I mean, they knew how to talk and they knew how to walk and they knew how to care about their friends. And they knew how to love and serve their family. And I realized that what God was calling me to do was shape their character even more than I was shaping their mind. And so the strength that I had, that I loved them more than felt reasonable sometimes, and that I loved Jesus and wanted to introduce them to him, that turned out to be the greatest strength.
That's beautiful. And it's encouraging because I think a lot of us can probably resonate with a number of the things that you mentioned, even if we haven't had the chance to walk them all out. We feel very strongly and are determined that our children are not going to trip over the same rocks we tripped over the years.
And they still might.
And they might, but we're not going to allow them to be afraid of it and use it as an excuse to not try. And also, the beautiful surprise is that as you're encouraging them to keep going,
you're learning.
Yeah, exactly. You get the benefit of learning with them.
It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is the reason. I mean, you guys have heard me say a million times, it is not a lie all my friends know that this is the truth as well. I am so excited for the math map. I'm so excited.
Yes.
I cried when I've read portions of this
Yes.
math map. And
Yes.
it's not just because I want my kid to know math and I'm so excited to do it again. It's because I really do believe that this curriculum is focusing on teaching math from the perspective of God and the
Yep.
way that He sees the world and the way that He
Yep.
designed it. And so it is doing what you just described, is keeping you from putting math in one box and sealing it off from language arts and history and everything else. And therefore, you can gain a depth of understanding that you would not have had before,
Yep.
because it really is all around us. And so I'm excited about it, and I know that I'm going to learn way
Yes.
more
I'm
probably
excited
than
about
my
it
son.
too.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just encouraging to hear you say that. And one other thing that you made me think of as you were sharing was just the fact that learning to become a lifelong learner allows you to release yourself from expert mentality. That's something that's really popular in our culture these days. And, I hope that I don't come across as judgmental, because I'm sure that I do this in certain ways. But I know so many people who have a problem and then they jump to hiring someone.
Yes.
And, I was raised with a modest, one income family. And so we had to figure it out. And my parents are very smart and industrious, and they did figure it out. But also they taught me that you can figure it out and you can
Yes.
learn how to do electrical engineering or just something that is beyond your scope of knowledge or interest. If you have a need, you don't always have to hire an expert. You can learn to do the thing. And so I love the type of human and character that what you just described creates or nurtures. And I'd love to ask you, speaking of just today's culture, about your perspective of the culture, the current culture and the current climate that moms and parents are facing, because it's my first time, but I have the feeling that times are changing. And while there's nothing new under the sun, there are so many things that are normal and just in the water right now, that I'm having to explain to my toddler or make sure I address at an early age, that I just don't remember being as urgent, to be honest with you, when I was
You
a
didn't
child.
have to talk to kids about some of the things that they are accosted by. And
Mhm.
you can keep your children away from, music that you deem inappropriate, unless you go to Target and they're blasting it on the
There you go.
loudspeaker, right? Or unless you go to a sporting event to support some children in your church, and the dance team is doing things that you think, I don't think I knew about those kind of moves when I was in junior high, and I really don't want my
There you
7-year
go.
old to see that. I don't want to have to explain
Uh-huh.
that. Um, I My husband and I have sat around a lot and talked about the fact that we did not have to deal with the internet when our girls were
Mhm.
little. That's how old I am, okay? We didn't have the internet, and my children did not have their own computer. The only computer that they had access to was on the desk in the kitchen, and that's where I did
Mhm.
my school prep too. So we were all there. So they didn't have phones. Okay. My kids thought they were the last living teenagers in America without phones, and they weren't. And
I didn't have a phone either.
no,
I can tell
right? And so they didn't have access to some of the things, some of the distractions that
you.
kids have now. And the world speaks in a shout all the time. What's advertised on television or in movies, um, what comes across the internet on the sidebars when you are Googling, when you're researching. And I know that there are programs that you can put, there are filters that you can put on. But our kids have access to so much information. Even if all you do is watch the news at night. When I was little, okay, this is hilarious potentially. When I was little, when I was really little, like a preschooler, so I was just playing and the news was on in the living room, I thought the news and the Vietnam War were the same thing, because that's all the news was ever about when I was
Wow.
little. It was Walter Cronkite talking about the war, and I thought that's what the news was. But it was not, we didn't know immediately. Like, if there's a
Mm.
huge earthquake or a tsunami or a plane crash or a coup, all the way on the
Mhm.
other side of the world, everybody in the world will know about it in 10 minutes. All of the bad news that happens everywhere all the time bombards our kids, bombards us, but at least we're adults and
Mhm.
hopefully can filter. But our students are bombarded by so much, and it's really hard to wade through, and it is absolutely a distraction. Um, I have concerns. Watch youth groups sometimes sit in church and they all have phones. They're sitting beside each other, sometimes texting each other, but they're not with each other. I'm really afraid that there's a lack of person to person communication and community building. And I really, I really believe, my pastor said this a couple of weeks ago and it really brought me up short. And I thought, that's it. I actually think community is God's end game. I think we are supposed to be, everything is supposed to be preparing us for community. We are supposed to be in community. In At the end of all, there will be one
Mhm.
community, and it will be the new heaven, and we will be there with Jesus. And that is going to be a huge community. I think that community is God's end game. And I don't think that devices are helping us. In some ways, they do, because like Delise and I are able to talk together, and we are building community with you guys through technology. But I do worry that by and large, the phones and the computers and the chat rooms, um, and the Snapchat and the Instagram and all of that stuff it's making for fewer person to person interactions for our kids.
Mhm.
And there are also fewer and fewer um, people skill practice opportunities because so much stuff happens online. There are online chats and online meetings. Um,
Mhm.
I also think another thing that really strikes me when I was little, um, my mom was not my cruise director. Like she had stuff to do and I did my chores. And when I was done, if I pestered her too much for I'm bored or take me somewhere or can so and so come, she would say, "You are free to play. I have work to do and I'll share with you." And so I learned, that she had provided me lots to read and lots to play with and freedom to do that. And so that's what I did with my girls. I'm like, we have an entire closet that's called the craft closet, and anything in there you are welcome to use to make whatever you need to do to continue whatever it is that you're playing with your sister. And
Lisa,
I just think kids don't have time to get bored anymore. And so they don't know how to amuse themselves.
thank you. Thank you. I was wondering, and sometimes before we have an interview, we'll talk to the guest and kind of prep them and hope that they go in a specific direction. I did
Yes,
not do
yeah.
that. I said, "Did you see the
No, you
questions?" And
didn't.
that's
You
all we
didn't at
we
all.
said. And I was hoping on the way over here that would be one of the differences that you mentioned, because sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. Not because my kid is asking me to play and I have work
No,
to
but
do.
people are asking you for play groups.
Well, and other people are expecting you to give your child 100% undivided attention all day long and making it seem as though if you don't do that, and you and I are both people
Right.
we were stay-at-home moms. Like,
Yeah.
I am giving you more time than most kids get.
Yes.
But if you don't do that, they make you feel as though you could be damaging their psyche and you are, not setting them up for success, or you're not giving them enough resources. And at the end of the day, we've got crayons and glue and I
Well, you
want
know
you
what?
to use your mind.
And there's the great outdoors. I mean, go outside and lie in the grass and think about that you have nothing to do, because God's world will give you something to look at and smell and touch and run through and play with and ponder. I just think when we schedule our kids too much, when we take too much as our responsibility, we rob them of the ability to stretch their self-entertainment skills. You know, you're not going to live with them. I used to tell my girls, I'm not going with you to college, so let's figure out how to deal with this now while I'm with you to shepherd you, because you're going to have to figure it out. I just think, I know as a kid, I needed time to think and to think big thoughts. And I created a lot of things that I wouldn't have done if I had been busy or scheduled all the time. And my girls were the same way. I mean, I turned them out after foundations, after we did school for the morning and essentials sometimes in the afternoons for the one as they got older. But then it was like, okay, I have housework to do. My husband's a pastor. I have church work to do. I'm a challenge director. I got to stay ahead of these kids somehow. And so I had stuff to do. And it's like, you go out and do, or you stay in and do, but you do.
Discover the joy of learning with Delightful Art Co. They have arts integrated classes, beautiful art books, and enthusiastic art teachers. Transform learning into a delightful experience by combining academics and creativity for all ages. Bring beauty and creativity into your homeschooling journey with cohesive illustrated books that make subjects come alive. Encourage and inspire students from around the world in live online classes. Registration is open now for summer and fall classes. Classical Conversations families enjoy $10 off any live class with the coupon code CCFAM10OFF. That's CCFAM10OFF. Visit delightfulartco.com and make learning delightful. That's delightfulartco.com. And go get that $10 off and join a live class today. Now, back to the show.
Yes. Well, and let me ask you a question about this too, because I know that this is a challenge, not just because of the philosophy of our day for millennial and Generation Z parents, but I wonder sometimes, as a person who is a novice at disciplining, as in training my child in the way that he should go, my kid, I wonder sometimes if part of the reason it's so challenging for us to do this is that we're not training our children to be able to do it. And we haven't equipped them with maybe the strength of character. You hear me struggling to find the right words because I'm not sure if I'm on the right path, but I just wonder, is part of the problem that our kids aren't disciplined enough to be able to go and play and be trusted?
Wow, I had not thought about that. I guess that is possible. I think that maybe we need to spend some time thinking how much responsibility is appropriate at every level of childhood. You know, there's a time when you are responsible enough to play by yourself in a room where I can't see you, right?
Right.
And you know that, you know, we don't stack chairs and climb on them. And I had one, I did train the girls to, if there was a big crash, their first job was to say, if it was true, I'm okay. So that I don't have to run up the stairs or down the stairs to see if a catastrophe had happened. But, you know, I think you have to teach them. I know as they got older, I made them responsible for getting along with one another. So I don't, past a certain point, I don't want you to come. If nothing's on fire, nobody is bleeding much, you know, and nobody has left the premises, you work it out. You work it out. I don't need to be involved. It teaches you how to love. You model for them loving their neighbor, taking turns, listening well, you can be mad, but you can't hurt somebody, you know, and your words
Mhm.
sometimes hurt somebody. And so I think you're right. Maybe we are concerned that we haven't given our children a real understanding of reasonable boundaries and how to meet challenges like I didn't get my way or somebody
Mhm.
hurt me or I damaged something. What am I going to do? You know, you
Yeah.
learn a lot. I mean, we did for several years ban glitter at our house
The classic
after a
man.
particular time when I had overestimated how careful they could be with glitter. But you know, that is a small thing in the annals of my children learning to be adults,
Yeah.
and we all moved past it. Um, yeah, I had never thought about that. Have we not equipped them to play? But you know, I think it begins early. I
Mm.
think that even with a really small child, you can say, Mommy needs to write this letter, or Mommy needs to finish this list. Come sit by me and play. I can't play
Mm.
with you. I can't play with that toy with you, but we can be together. And then they move a little farther from you. And then they are responsible. And so it starts out that you need to play by yourself for 20 minutes while mommy fixes supper. Okay. Or
Mhm.
and okay, I'm going to just be really revealing now. I had a precocious one who spoke early and thought early, and then she began to speak all the things she thought. And I loved her, and we were very much alike, and we were all in all together. We were great companions. But by about middle of the afternoon, even my imaginative extrovert self had had all the words that I could happily take in. And I really didn't want to be super short or roll my eyes or anything. And so I had to come up with a new thing. And so she was probably 4 or 5 when we came up with the new game called Hot Chocolate Coffee Break. And she was mesmerized by that thought. Oh, how do you play? And I said, well, this is what happens. Mama has a cup of coffee and I make you a cup of hot chocolate. But the only way we can drink it in the same room is if we don't talk at all. Now, you could take yours because she would talk honestly. She would
To
talk to
herself.
herself in the mirror, and that was fine. But I said, if you need to talk, I completely understand. If you need to talk a story, I totally get that. You would just take your hot chocolate to a different room, and mommy would be in here. And I said, it lasts for 30 minutes. And she's like, that's so cool. Let's do it. And so we did. And it revolutionized my ability to be happy with her stories and questions and projects from 3:30 on. And it gave her a measure of independence. I wasn't saying I don't like your words or your voice or your story. I was saying, here's the space for me and you to be other. And so she was that young and that worked fine. 30 minutes was good. And the beauty, the epilogue to that story is the beauty is that when my girls, because we still do it every day at
Mhm.
3 o'clock, people know. They'll say, I know this is coffee break time. Can you do this meeting now? But when they were older, we kept it all the way through. When they became teenagers, hot chocolate coffee break became the time we did get together and talk, because as teenagers they wanted their own space and they wanted a play. They did their own work and they weren't always right with me. So at 3 to 3:30 became hot chocolate coffee break, we do talk. And
That
so
is
it's just it's you fit it to their age and stage.
I love it. That is the sweetest thing. I'm sitting here thinking, "You changed my life, Lisa."
Oh,
You know
I'm
I
so glad.
you
it,
know
it
I have the storyteller who I love, and it's so fun to hear stories out of a little brain like that, and I am an extroverted introvert, and I need hot chocolate coffee breaks, so we're
was
gonna start doing that.
Well, and I have a grandson. born to an introvert who
Yeah.
gets enough. Late in the afternoon, she will sometimes call and say, "Will you please talk to this child?
Mhm.
Because I've
Mhm.
heard all the words and I just need somebody else to be in on it."
Somebody else chat. Exactly, which I know is just a beautiful honor for
Yes,
you.
it's lovely. I
Sure.
love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
exactly, it's a highlight, and that'll probably become the new tradition
I
that you have
hope.
every
I
time you
hope.
call
He now
little guy.
lately he'll get in the bathtub, he'll say, "And now we take a bath and then we call Lolly." And so he calls
Aw,
me after bath time most nights to tell me a story.
that's awesome, and I do appreciate hearing your perspective and the principle or the thread that I was hearing through what you were saying is it starts young, and you
Yeah.
have to keep practicing,
Yes.
because
And maybe even stretching.
yeah, and stretching it because I remember my sister-in-law was such a gift to me and trying to figure out like, okay, if I don't
Yeah.
wanna do screen culture, what do I
Right.
do?
What
How
do
do I
I do
yeah,
instead?
how do I teach my child to love books? And she was saying, "Oh, well, with the infant, sit the book up
Yes,
during anytime
absolutely.
he's reading and just teach him to read from
Right.
that point
Well,
forward,
and
and he'll
let
love
them
it."
see you reading. Let them see
Exactly.
you reading. That's just what I heard one of my girls one time say, "Oh, we have books and we have a lot of books, as you know." That's just what my family does. We read.
Yeah, exactly, but, that begins at the beginning, and if you practice it a lot of the intervals that you mentioned are also and it's I'm not here to vilify screen time, we all know that there's a place
Absolutely. There it has a place.
exactly, but those intervals, I think, are where we've developed that other muscle memory, and so there is another way that I think has become a little bit dormant, but if you wanna resurrect it, this is what other people were doing. I read, Leo Charlie and the Chocolate Factory the other day. I don't know when the last time you've read this book was, but he stopped me in my tracks because toward the end, there's this long Oompa Loompa songs, you know how they are with the songs. And
Yes.
this one was talking about Mike TV, the character who's plugged in front of the TV all day long.
Yes.
And they start saying, you know, "I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, 'What else am I gonna do? How am I gonna get stuff done? If I don't put my child in front of the TV, I'll never be productive.'"
Oh,
They go through all this whole long list, and, you know, this book was written in the '60s, and then he
yeah.
says, "Well, what did children used to do before before the television was invented?" It says, "They used to read. They read, and they read, and they read, and they loved to read, and even little children would read." And it was so
Yes.
encouraging to me because sometimes I think we need just a peek into the past so that we can
Right.
see that we're not the only ones and that what we're trying to create or nurture is can be a reality. And
Yes.
I'd love to hear an encouragement from you for today's moms. And, you know, all of these things that we were talking about, like how would you encourage us not to be overwhelmed by all of the supposedly new things that we're facing, but to continue to press forward?
Yeah. Here is the thing. What God calls us to and what he's offering us and equipping us to do the thing he's called us to do is the same now as it always was. He is calling us to know him. He's calling us to love him. He's calling us to teach our children to love him. And that's the same. That is still the same. The fundamentals of parenting are the same. I know that you guys have to deal with phones and screens in ways that I did not. But the fundamentals of parenting are the same. Your children need you to love them. They need to know that they are worthy of your time and that you are investing, that they are not a distraction from the important work that you're doing, whatever that is, but they are the important work. I remember telling my daughter one time as I was correcting her, it felt like for the thousandth time that day for the same thing. And I was just trying not to just, but to explain to her that, you know, God had called me to be her mama and that he had called me to teach her the right ways to do things and that he had called me to give her correction when it was necessary. And because I wanted to be faithful to him and obedient to him, I had to do that. And so she listened to me very thoughtfully and then asked me, Mama, when are you going to get a different job? And I had to turn my head so that I wouldn't laugh because it struck me so funny. She's like, okay, got it. Okay, good. I understand. Okay, but could you get a different job? And I said, well, honey, I think I'm going to keep this job. I'll have the same job for a long time, but the responsibilities will change. But what I'm telling you is that you have the same job. Your responsibilities are the same: to love your child, to show them Jesus, to pray about everything, to model learning. So let them see you read. Let them see you read about something you don't know about, or look up something that you need to learn in order to do the next thing. Like Delise was saying, you don't know how to fix the toilet? Look it up. It's everywhere. You can figure this out. So model learning, but also model virtues. And that's hard because staying home with children is hard. And being patient and showing mercy and showing grace. But guys, you need to show grace to yourself. You need to show grace to yourself. Your children are watching and listening to what you say about yourself. And you need to model virtues, but virtues to yourself too. Build good communication with your kids and talk about everything. Don't let there be anything. I can remember, there were times when my mom said, we don't talk about things like that, or that's not for children to talk about. And I remember as a child thinking, I'm not going to do that to my kids. Everything is not appropriate to share. And there are appropriate ways to share based on age and development of your child. But your child needs to feel like they could talk to you about everything without censure or immediate judgment. And so the best thing that I ever learned to do was to put my finger over my lips. Because I'm very apt to want to support you by talking, but that sometimes truncates what they're trying to say to me. One of the beauties of a cell phone was that my daughter, when she went off to college, would call me and talk about things. And she would tell me things that would make my eyes get really big or that really worried me. But she couldn't see my face. This was before FaceTime. So it was just on the cell phone. And she couldn't see me get pale or get red or my eyes get big. And I would just get up and walk and let her talk. And I would ask her clarifying questions. So what happened then? Well, what did you think about that? Well, how did that make, all those questions. And so she kept talking to me and she would call and talk to me about things that her suite mates and hallmates could not talk to their parents about. She said, we need a grown-up perspective, but they won't call their mom. What do you think? And so open communication is so important. Relationships are the key. Love your child, respect your child, listen to your child, play with your child, stay fun, stay playful, pray with your child, laugh with your child. That's what I would encourage you, Mom. So you're not a PhD in anything. So you didn't finish college. So your family doesn't have 2 cars and a boat and go on big vacations. So you can't afford swim lessons or dance lessons. So what's the most important thing to your child is that they have your heart and they have your ear. And so your children will not notice the lack of all of that other stuff if you are there with them in the moment, giggling under the blanket about a silly story, or giving them your last white sheet to make a superhero cape, right? Or taking a picnic to the creek at the bottom of the woods in the middle of the day just because they ask. It's about relationship. And you've got that.
That's such a great encouragement. Um, and that's a desire, I think, of I would say most moms' hearts is to have a relationship with their kids. I mean, you want more of them because you want them around, so
Yes,
so
exactly.
it's fun, and, when you were telling that story about being on the phone with your daughter, I thought back to the first episode we had with you, which we will link in the show notes, and we described supportive sounds that you can make as a good listener, and so, guys, go back and listen to that. If you want more of Lisa, we started off this episode by saying that she really has given her life to equipping and encouraging parents. And one huge way that she does that is through the podcast Everyday Educator, which comes out weekly right now on Tuesdays. And so I'd love it if you could just tell us a little bit more about Everyday Educator and what families can expect to hear there.
Yeah. We called it Everyday Educator because every day, the word every day has some connotations that really relate to us. It homeschooling happens every day. It never ends and it's relentless and it's all, but always also every day implies that it's regular, that it's expected, that it's familiar. Things that are your everyday dishes or your everyday shoes are things that are comfortable and familiar and comforting. And the educator part is obvious. I mean, we are going to teach our children, but we also are going to be learning facilitators. So we're going to
Mm.
learn alongside them, and we might be able to arrange things so that we can all learn better. Maybe we could buy equipment or borrow something or make space in our home for something new. And we're going to be a mentor, especially to our older learners, because there are going to be
Mm.
things that your children are going to get better at than you are fast. And because it may be that they're just more naturally gifted, but it might also be that they're more interested in pursuing that. And so you may be a mentor of how to get started. The Everyday Educator is really a celebration of what we do with and for our families. It is really a place where we encourage one another in the joys and the struggles or challenges. We share new ideas. I always have guests who tell me something that I never knew. And I'm sure they're telling my listeners something that they never knew. We highlight resources, maybe a resource that you have known about before but never thought of using in a certain way. I've got guests who have 1,000 different ways to slice and dice the resources that we all have. We just never thought of using it that way. And in the Everyday Educator community, what we do is inspire each other to keep going. We find new ways to do things. And it's exciting to know that there are still ways for us to learn as grown-ups.
Absolutely. Yes, we're never done. The Lord is making
Yeah.
new all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And it is exciting, and I'm excited, honestly, not to sound cheesy in this moment, but I'm excited because have been waiting to tell you all that Blessings
Yeah.
in Motherhood and Everyday Educator are now going to be more than friends. We're going to
Yay.
merge. And so I will be over there with Lisa, Everyday
Yeah.
Educating, and we'll be talking all about the things that she described and bringing some new flavor to the show and including a lot of new voices on the show, but keeping that really important backbone of learning being a lifestyle and teaching and equipping our families on a regular basis to homeschool, to do what they set out to do, what they felt called to do at the beginning, which was teach their children to love learning. And so I'm really honored to sit across this virtual table with you, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm so excited,
I'm
Delise.
so excited. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we'd love to hear from you all as we are in the process of creating something new together. So you can find us over at social media, of course, at Blessings in Motherhood for this show, but you can also find Lisa over on social media at Everyday Educator. And so we would love for you guys to start following her there. Make sure you go and subscribe to the podcast because you're going to start hearing my voice and a lot of other very beautiful and helpful, encouraging voices over on the podcast. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we tell them goodbye?
No, I'm just really excited that we are expanding our podcast. So it's not like anything's ending. It's just
Yeah.
all getting better and more inclusive because we are realizing that from birth through graduation and beyond, we are every day educating our children. And so all of the things relate to all of us, and we'd love to bring it all together.
Absolutely. So thank you all for listening. Again, go follow Lisa over on Instagram and Facebook at Everyday Educator. You will see her on YouTube soon on the Classical Conversations YouTube page. So make sure you subscribe there. And then, of course, make sure if you like podcasts and you're listening to this, you need to subscribe to Everyday Educator, the podcast, because that's where you will hear more from Lisa, and that's where you can hear more from me over on Everyday Educator. So as always, thank you all for listening. We're so happy to have you here, throwing confetti and holding our tissues all along the way.
Yeah.
Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.